So, welcome everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join today's webinar. My name is Stephen Foster, and I specialize in helping organizations like yours improve the way they listen to citizens and act on feedback. I also have Derek Lamb with me, who works with many councils in New Zealand and will be monitoring and answering any questions that come up in the chat. Today's session will explore a crucial topic: why capturing citizen feedback is more important than ever in 2025, and how the right approach can transform engagement and decision making for councils. By the end of today's session, you will walk away with a clear understanding of why real-time feedback is a must-have, a look at the challenges of traditional feedback methods, and the best way forward, and how HappyOrNot in this case makes it simple. So the agenda that I'd like to cover is as follows, and over the next around 30 minutes: why citizen feedback matters more than ever, expectations have changed and councils need to adapt, the challenges of feedback capture, why traditional approaches lack the value they used to, one size does not fit all, taking a look at the different surveys that you deliver and how they differ from a perspective of capturing feedback, the power of real-time feedback, how instant insights can drive better decision making, and looking a little bit at how HappyOrNot for the public sector, a simple yet powerful solution to collect and act on feedback. And then I'll finish with a summary and wrap up. We do have a couple of polls throughout the session, just so be ready to participate. So I'd like to start with a first poll, and what I'd like to really understand is get a sense of your biggest challenges with citizen feedback. You should see a poll appear hopefully in your chat window in a few seconds, and or on the screen, and you can answer the responses. So what is your biggest challenge when collecting citizen feedback? Is it low response rates, getting feedback from a diverse range of people? Data takes too long to analyze, hard to take action, or all of the above? And I can see some of the responses coming in. It's around low response rates seems to be high, and also the time it takes for the data to be analyzed to actually make action, and also all of the above. So all the sort of common reasons that we sort of see when we're talking to councils around collecting feedback from their residents, their citizens. And in 2025, Australia councils are facing significant pressures in the realm of customer experience. And I think here are some of the good key challenges and trends that you might be facing. Digital transformation. Many councils are at different stages of their digital transformation journeys. And the aim of transformation is normally to improve service delivery by integrating modern technology to enable more streamlined processes. The key, though, is not to lose sight of the goal of enabling your residents the opportunity to provide feedback when they want to, in a format that is accessible for everyone. Building trust. A primary objective for local governments is to really foster trust between citizens and the councils. And this involves enhancing transparency, responsiveness, and engagement with the community. There is a trend towards disengagement and cynicism towards government and public services, and greater engagement and trust means more people are involved in the system, which means greater diversity of thought in the way we plan our cities. And the more people that are engaged, the better the decisions and the transparency of those decisions are. And the pressure around complex service delivery, councils provide a wide range of services from waste management to event management to aged care to libraries to community health care, and the list just goes on. And the complexity of these services often lead to challenges with legacy systems and data integration. Silos of data exist, and how do we break them when it comes to customer experience to drive greater accuracy is a big concern. And high expectations. Citizens now expect the same level of efficient and personalized service from their local governments as they do from commercial entities like Amazon or Uber. This has definitely raised the bar for councils to deliver high quality customer experience. And as always, cost pressures are always there. Rising costs and budget constraints are pushing councils to find more efficient ways to deliver services without compromising quality. These pressures are definitely driving councils to invest heavily in customer experience initiatives to meet the evolving needs and expectations of their communities. Simply put, I think collecting feedback isn't just about compliance and reporting anymore. It's about creating a citizen first culture that makes public services better, faster, and more responsive. And citizen feedback is crucial because it helps councils make informed decisions that directly impact communities. Without consistent feedback, council we often see face blind spots. They only hear from the citizens when things go terribly wrong, or they know how many people are coming through the doors of or using the services, but they don't know necessarily how they feel about those services that have been delivered. And when we look at some of the key benefits of citizens' feedback, we think of improving services, boosting engagement and trust, being able to identify issues early, data-driven decisions, and enhancing transparency. So citizen feedback helps identify what's working well and what needs improvement. Councils can use this data to enhance services like library services, waste collection, public transport, consent processes, and community facilities, ensuring they meet the residents' needs. When people feel their voices are heard, they're more likely to engage with their local government. Trust grows when councils show they're listening and acting on feedback. And real-time feedback really allows councils to detect problems before they escalate. Instead of waiting for complaints to pile up, they can address issues proactively whenever it's broken, whether it's a broken streetlight or dissatisfaction with public transport. And being able to make decisions based and making decisions based, I suppose, on assumptions can be risky. So feedback being data driven provides measurable insights, helping councils allocate resources and effectively prioritizing initiatives that truly matter to the residents based on the feedback that you've captured across the different services that you're delivering. And when councils openly collect and act on feedback, it really does foster that transparency. Residents see their input leading to real changes, which strengthens that public confidence in local governance. Think about a bus service that gets complaints maybe on social media. What if instead of waiting for that public outrage, you could, collect real-time feedback daily and fix issues before they actually escalate? Citizen feedback isn't just a nice to have, it's a key driver of better governance and stronger communities. The question is, how well is your council collecting and using feedback today? And I suppose some of the problems that we see when we're talking to councils and local government is that most councils are still relying on the traditional feedback methods. And when I talk about traditional feedback methods, I'm talking about, annual surveys, the surveys which you have to run every year, capturing, 20, 30 different or more questions, but you only capture that data once a year. those online complaint forms or compliment forms, if you have them, that tend to really attract the more negative feedback than any real positive feedback on what you're doing well. So, those people who had a really, really terrible experience really try and find a way of actually giving you that feedback. Phone surveys, they're often expensive and time consuming, and I suppose less and less people are really willing to do them post a call. They might say they will on the call, but they then end the call before that actual survey actually happens. So there's a lot of money being spent in these feedback processes which aren't necessarily delivering the outcomes you expect. And in some situations, the volunteer asks for feedback. It's very selective feedback capture, time consuming, and it takes a lot of time to actually pull together the actual results from it. Social channels is often unstructured and hard to measure. And if you do town halls, really it's only for a small segment of the community that participates on very specific topics. And when we think about the digital surveys, they're really reliant on those residents or citizens having the skills and technologies to engage. And you probably are missing some demographics by just only having those options available to people. And this, I think, is why councils struggle to act on insights. It's not that they don't care, but they don't have the right data at the right time, easily accessible for all to see. And I suppose collecting citizen feedback is essential for councils, because it aims to enhance public services and governance. However, several challenges often impedes this process, and I bet you can relate to some of these issues. Low response rates. Traditional surveys and consultation processes often get too few a response, leading to very biased decisions based on a few. And leading into like that unrepresentative feedback. The people who give feedback can tend to be a vocal minority, and they can over dominate and distort the overall community's views. The digital divide I sort of referred to on the previous slide is that online feedback, maybe QR codes, maybe digital surveys, is really excluding those without access to technology or digital skill sets to understand what they're supposed to be doing, and therefore doesn't necessarily represent all your social economic groups within your community. Um, because of different ways you're collecting that feedback, you tend to see some data quality issues. Poor data accuracy can lead to, I suppose, bad policy and resource allocation. And even with collecting feedback, there is often the slow implementation. Even when you get that feedback and you collect it, there's often quite a lot of delay in action that can reduce that public trust. And I suppose that came back a little bit in that original poll that I did at the start of the session, about that takes long to analyze and therefore takes long to put into practice. And for all of these, we see engagement gaps. Many of the community want to be involved and give feedback, but the consultation processes often fall short to enabling that capability. Addressing these challenges requires council to, I believe, to adopt more inclusive, accessible, and efficient feedback mechanisms to really capture the community's voice. And I just want to bring up this example. When I was researching for this webinar and just trying to see what surveys were being done out by different councils in Australasia, I came across this one from a New Zealand council. It was their annual survey on all surveys, which I'm sure all of you do in some format each year or every other year. And when I looked actually at the detail behind this actual annual surveys, I was really challenged to see how there really was a representative met the indicated 95% confidence level and margin error of plus or minus 3.5%, which the consulting firm had specified in the report. And diving a little bit deeper into the results, I saw for their annual survey, they got over 1,030 responses, of which 771 met the criteria of being over 18 and lived in the community. And of those 771, they were actually sourced from online panel data. So people who had signed up online, who are happy to do really any survey they sent to them, in this case, who lived in the council jurisdiction. So the council, as of 2024, had over 407,000 residents. So a survey response of 771 really equates to just 0.189% of the residents giving feedback that might drive all of their actions in 2025. And as you can see from the results on this side over here, they look great. But are they really truly accurate or representative? I suppose I'll let you make your own decision on that. 100% satisfied in education programs, 95% satisfied in libraries. Remembering maybe some of the people they actually surveyed may have never used a library or maybe had never gone into a customer service area. But it's this limited data set that they're basing a lot of their actions on. And the facts really speak for themselves. A study done by fastercapital.com in 2024 found that traditional surveys generated less than 10% response rates, and that 50% of the feedbacks collected were outdated by the time they were actually reviewed. That in turn obviously reduced the impact of those improvements they could make off that feedback that they gathered. And that 70% of councils really struggled with the low engagement rates in customer experience initiatives due to the length or complex nature of the different feedback processes that they had implemented, which really means that councils are flying blind, making decisions based on incomplete or potentially outdated data and feedback. I suppose, unfortunately, one size does not fit all of the services that you deliver for your community. And the ones listed here are just a sample of the services most councils deliver. And I know these services can mount into the hundreds of different things that you're doing for your community and delivering as a service to them, whether they're in person services, whether they're uh, natural outdoor spaces that you're providing or facilities that you're providing for them to utilize, whether they're manned or unmanned, like bathrooms, public bathrooms, or community areas or parks. And unfortunately, some of the traditional methods and digital only approaches, which we see more and more apparent, like QR codes or digital services, do not really work in all of these environments all of the time. And I suppose this is where we would, think about imagining a world where councils could see real-time citizen sentiment on a daily basis, quickly identify problem areas and make data-driven improvements, engage more citizens with easy, frictionless and accessible feedback tools. I think that's the future of feedback for councils. That's what councils really want. That's what they want to be able to utilize to drive decisions and really engage with their communities around what do they like to see in their region. And I think this is exactly where the Happy or Not solution comes in. And the Happy or Not solution provides instant feedback collection using what we call our smiley kiosks in physical locations, really designed to maximize feedback, really accessible, really easy for anyone to give feedback with a variety of different deployment options to suit the needs of the services being delivered, whether it's a pulse survey that you want or do you want to delve into the root and cause. Or we have the real-time digital feedback through Smiley Digital and what we call Smiley Signs on websites, emails, and signage, providing the complete solution to capture feedback in both the physical, the virtual, and the unmanned areas like parks or exhibitions or events. Coupled with really easy deployment, literally no IT complexity and no IT needed to deploy the solution to start capturing feedback from your residents and citizens, and really generating actionable insights turning the raw feedback that you're gathering from the different services you deliver into meaningful reports. This approach really makes it easy to gather accurate real-time feedback and use it to drive improvements across the board, across the different services that you're actually delivering. And depending on the location of use, service center to library to recreation center to consent processes, then the volume of feedback can be anything from 2,000 to 20,000 feedbacks a year via the Happy or Not solution, as seen by many of our councils using the service across Australia and New Zealand and the world. So it's a real volume. And when you compare that level of feedback to the previous real life example of an annual survey of just 771 feedbacks, that's a lot of real time data to make insightful data driven actions from. Real data that you could publish up to your website to actually say, as our community, you're rating us 85% happy with the services being delivered by the library, 95% happy from the delivers being delivered in person in the service centers, for example. A real way to share back to your community the great work that you're actually doing, and actually that the majority of your community is really behind the services that you're delivering. It doesn't have to be all negative. And with all these different touch points, as I mentioned before, Happy or Not really has a solution that fits them all uniquely while maintaining consistent reporting across them. So I'd like to just take a couple of these examples and just talk about how you'll deploy the different types of solutions into these environments, remembering the deployment is simple, really is very little IT involved to get these up and running, to start collecting feedback, unlike other potential solutions out there where you may need lots of consultative activity. So let's just look at a good example of the library. And we often see libraries as a key area where councils are looking to collect feedback because of the diverse level of community using those facilities, whether it's youth at school using study areas, to whether it's people going in and taking out different types of resources or using it as community spaces. It's a great wealth of information about the general population and how they're feeling about the services you provide. So when we think of a library, for example, there's obviously a main entry and a raft of services that you're being delivered through that library. So you might want to collect feedback on the overall experience via a Smiley Touch kiosk at the exit, collecting feedback from everyone who visits, not just the people transacting through the tills. And then you also might use some digital Smiley on your library website resources to see how people are engaging on the resources online. And then finally, you might use some Smiley sign to capture feedback across different study areas or community rooms or other services that are taking place within the library. And all that feedback feeding back into the overall library satisfaction experience through one reporting portal for the managers of that library to access and look at, as well as the different team members within that library. So really inclusive level of feedback, making it very accessible, regardless of demographic, for people to be able to provide feedback the way they want to. Recreation centres is again another place we see often that councils are looking to gather feedback, and often either the council are running their recreation centres themselves, or they've outsourced some of that running of the recreation centre to a third party to manage. But you still need to understand the KPIs around the performance of that recreation centre. So again, in this sort of case, we've often seen the Smiley Touch or Smiley Terminal, as great tools to collect feedback in general areas. So a lot of our customers will use the touch in cafes or the reception or in the gym, but they're also using the Smiley Terminal for wall to gather feedback around bathrooms or changing rooms cleanliness, which we know are key KPIs and concerns for residents when they're using these facilities. Coupled with the real-time alerts, really enable you to notify your staff if there are any issues and be very proactive about the way those issues are dealt with. often areas which are forgotten and not always captured. And I often see when I go represent just the paper forms to give you feedback on, very generic, but this is enabling you to target specific areas of service within that recreation centre to collect the feedback which really matters. And then the transport hub, transport hubs using the Smiley terminal for rail really allows you to collect feedback on trips in real time if you wanted to. A lot of councils might run bus service or train service or other forms of transport for communities. So having the ability to collect feedback on those trips in real time using a device that requires no power or Wi-Fi to work and collect feedback gives you really great flexibility, and people can just leave and press a button and feedback is taken without having to get their phone out, scan a QR code. If they remember and give feedback, they give it there and then, which maximizes that level of feedback in this particular form of service. Or in the bus stops themselves, using a Smiley sign to effortlessly collect feedback in unmanned areas, whether that's tap of a phone on a poster to give feedback or whether that's scanning a QR code for these unmanned areas. And finally, we can't forget the consent processes. These are obviously a big part of council process and areas where you want us to collect feedback on. And using the Smiley Digital to collect feedback on the ease of doing business with the council, whether that's via online forms or resources on websites, or capturing feedback on the email communications back and forth with residents. We had an example with a council in Victoria where the building consents team felt their website resources weren't set up in a way that really helped the community get access to them easily. So they used the Smiley Digital to collect real-time feedback on people's perception of the resources available to them and the ease of navigation. And through that, using that data to build a business case to say that they had to have change within their website, for example. And regardless of the different touch points, all of these results flow back into a common analytics platform that is simple to use for all who are involved. We're not just talking about, I suppose, the customer experience managers themselves, but also involving the service managers or the location managers or team leads. The results are really easy to consume and act upon. And the simple user interface really allows for minimal training uh, and the ability to really view these results quickly, identify patterns, areas of improvements, while providing, I suppose, those all important stats like level of feedback and CSAT or NPS KPIs. Our customers often praise really the simplicity of this reporting and happy not to be reliant on external consultants collating the results and feeding the data back to the point where the team is working in a reactive manner. Everything you would expect is available, from a user security via single sign-on, the ability to drill into results by survey, by location, by date and time, and options to export the data into other formats so that it can be shared more widely with the organization. And we don't put limits really on the feedback collected, the number of surveys that you might want to create or use, or the number of users that need access to the system. It's open to everyone that you need to have access to it. So there's no barriers to entry to accessing the data, whether that's a daily, weekly, or monthly email reports, or whether that's direct access to the data via the reporting portal or mobile app. Accessible data is key to improving customer experience and satisfaction, and HappyOrNot, limits the boundaries of entry for both your residents to give feedback and your employees to access it. And if I just take I suppose, an example of a real life example of, I suppose, how feedback changed processes. This is an example of a council in New South Wales. They had just started using HappyOrNot in their service centre, and the manager was receiving the email reports, but not yet really fully engrossed in the data in the reporting service. I had planned a meeting to go out and see them, to walk them through their first couple of months of results. And I noticed when I was looking into their results that when I looked at the month of June by day of week and by July by day of week, there'd been a noticeable shift in results from the Wednesday to the Thursday. And that made me think, what had changed during these months to cause that? So when I met with the manager, they were stunned because they had noticed actually by themselves that on Wednesday they felt a certain staff member maybe needed a little bit more training. So they had actually changed the shifts around with another staff member from the Thursday moving to the Wednesday and the person on Wednesday moving to the Thursday. And the results actually backed up this theory that this person needed this additional training because the results followed them from the Wednesday to the Thursday, and the person from Thursday went to the Wednesday. So from this point forward, I suppose they started to include the results in a weekly meetings with all the staff. And this is the power of real-time feedback. It enables you to act fast and make data-driven improvements. And in this second example, it's a simple one, but it's often the starting point for most organizations, is you can see a pattern of results by hourly distribution by the month. So August versus September here. And in August, you can see that there was potentially an issue around break times, that 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and 4 o'clock periods. And there were also busy times. So the manager, as a result of looking at the data and seeing this pattern, moved and shifted the breaks around. And you can see in the September they had fixed the lunchtime sort of period, but they actually pushed the results earlier and later. And this is all okay because this is just the power of the real-time feedback. It enables you to act fast, make those data-driven improvements, and really continuously improve and change quickly. So seeing this, they could still make further changes to improve the experience in October. So month on month, they're making changes, making improvements, seeing the impact it's having on those residents taking up that service. And in Happy or Not, we have this measurement of experience we call the Happy or Not index, which is comparable to that of a customer satisfaction score, CSAT, or a customer efforts score says. This really provides that baseline to see how well you are performing in different services. The higher the score, the higher the satisfaction, and the lower the score highlights really the areas of improvement. This is really enabling you to quickly spot patterns, identify quick wins and improvement areas to focus on. And in addition, I suppose the Happy Not Index from a Happy Not perspective can be used to compare your organization to other similar organization using what we call the global benchmark data that Happy or Not has with over 1.5 billion smiley face presses globally. We can also localize that benchmark data to Australasia. And here's a great example where we've done that. The data here is for Australasia, where over the past 3 years, we've collected over 800,000 feedbacks within the sector. And as you can see, the Happy or Not index on average for the sector, looking at all services combined, is at around 78. So, just over 2 out of 10 people are leaving unhappy from the services within the local council space, where the top 10% of councils is actually sitting around the 93 mark. So they're really delivering a high level of customer experience and service across the vast services that they're delivering. And I suppose the question really is where would your council fit if you were to compare yourselves to these results? And as a note, I suppose Happy or Not in the last 12 months globally has collected 4 million feedbacks from 289 companies in 33 countries in the public sector. And across all these industry, as I mentioned before, 1.5 billion feedback. So that's a lot of presses. That's a lot of data that we can validate your results to see how you're performing and where you need to focus. And taking that one step further, I suppose, and this is a little bit of a sneak preview to some of the information that we'll be sending to you after the webinar, is we can also benchmark you down to certain services within the council here. And I've just taken a sample here of libraries, service centres, recreation centres, websites, museums, galleries, and you can see here the sort of the industry average for Australasia across these and where the top 10% sit. Across. So it really gives you a really good perspective of where you fit and how you're performing. And I'm sure this type of information is absolutely crucial for benchmarking and seeing where you need to focus and improve as a council in your area. And I thought this quote from Albert Einstein was really relevant. It is, everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler. So I suppose what I mean by this is if you strip away the unnecessary complexity while retaining the essential elements that system feedback needs to deliver on, that's really Happy or Not in a nutshell. Keep it simple, stupid. And just before I wrap up, I'd really like your thoughts on this final poll. And I'm just going to launch this now. But it's really just around how confident do you feel improving your citizen feedback now? This should pop up in a minute in your window, and hopefully you can just give a little bit of feedback. I'll give a few seconds for that to come through. Okay. Yeah, which is great to see. So somewhere confident, need to obviously explore options. This is obviously a very complex area of collecting feedback in council. There's a lot of service you need to deliver, but hopefully this has given you some food for thought on it. So to summarize, citizen, I suppose, expectations are changing. People expect faster, more responsive public services. Traditional feedback methods are outdated. Long surveys and delayed data really don't provide the insights councils need today to act upon. Real-time feedback is really the future. It allows councils to detect issues instantly, hear from more citizens, and make more data-driven decisions in the moment. And as I mentioned, HappyOrNot makes this simple. With instant feedback collection, real-time insights and effortless implementation, councils really can engage more citizens and improve that service without really the hassle of those traditional surveys. At the end of the day, listening to citizens isn't just about gathering data, it's about taking action. So with the right tools, you can make smarter decisions, improve public trust, and create a more engaged community. And just one more slide to go, really, but just to really post this webinar, we will be sending out some public sector benchmarking data for you across Australasia, so that you can look at those insights for yourself, and also a service canvas, which is a really good planning document to get you thinking about what your priorities are and how you may act upon them. And within the benchmarking date paper itself, we'll include some top areas to focus on to improve satisfaction across different service areas based on all the data that has been gathered across the many councils using the survey. So really some really useful insights from that. So yeah, thank you for joining today. If you're ready to take citizen feedback to the next level, I'd obviously love to help. You can obviously visit our website or to book a chat with me or Derek, or get in contact via email, whatever the easiest way for you. And I suppose let's work together. Really would love to work together to improve that engagement, drive smarter decisions, and really enhance that public service. So I suppose if there's that's really my slides today. I hope that webinar has been useful for you. If there are any questions.
Steve, there's a question from Amanda.
Oh, yeah. So I'm just looking at that now. So how many questions can you ask in a survey? Does it allow for written commentary? Great question. So how the HappyOrNot service works, it's all about asking one key question. So please rate the service day, and then based on whether the person hits the green or the red faces, you could present a secondary question around great, what did we do well, or sorry, how can we improve for next time? And the person can select options, and then they can also leave comments. So at the end of that process, so it's mainly one key question and then the reason for that option. And we like to keep it simple, because the more questions that you add, the bigger the drop-off rate and the less likely that person is going to give you feedback next time. So we find just asking one key question is really important, but you can change that question as frequently as you like to capture that information. So really flexible. So I don't see any other questions, but I hope you've found that useful. And like I said, I'll be sending you out some of those resources after this session. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a great rest of the day. Thanks.